You know, it's kind of cathartic in a rather perverse way to watch the elderly, who have reached a point of not giving two shits about future consequences, given they could drop dead at any minute, straight up tell people what they think to their face, no matter how ultra-based and controversial their comments may be. And this old lady, for example, went viral recently for doing just that. Get a load of this based old bird.
Are you voting in the general election then?
No.
Ooh. Do you usually vote or?
I normally do, but now at 80 I've decided not to.
Who did you used to vote for?
I always voted Labour.
And how come you're not voting Labour this time?
Because I'm not voting for anybody this time.
What issues do you think matter to the country at large?
Well, I tell you for now, Enoch Powell had right idea, many years ago.
I see. And why do you think that?
Because it is what I think. I mean, you're not English, are you?
Well, that's a question for my birth certificate, I think.
I'm going back years and years and years.
So what would you say about someone like me who's mixed? Would you say that Enoch Powell had the right idea about someone like me?
Well, not just you, it's everybody else that's coming into it.
What would you prefer for people like me?
Stop where you are and not to come here. I'm not being personal, really.
No, this is really useful. So after this interview, I will be returning to Herefordshire.
Flaming Nora! Excuse me for a moment whilst I back down my raging lob on. Now, in case any of you have been living under a rock and have no idea who this Enoch Powell fella is, and are thinking he's just some sort of fictional comic book character or some shit, the dude was an English MP back in the 60s, who essentially got cancelled for daring to suggest that importing foreign interests would ultimately be at the expense of British interests. And allowing people to immigrate to a country without sufficient integration periods, and people who do not even share our baseline values to begin with and are even hostile to them at that, probably ain't going to lead to anywhere good. And so was essentially a modern day Nostradamus, who instead of having psychic powers to see through the veil of time, he simply had the powers of common sense and reasoned logic. And of course, turns out his prophecies of a replacement demographic, the loss of English cultural cohesion and the inevitable tearing apart of the social fabric, was grossly underestimated, as even he couldn't have predicted machete gangs, concert bombs and blatant colonisation of the country via the constant betrayal of the ministerial class. And it's this spirit of social and cultural resentment which is what this lady in the video is really getting at here. And you could also see that the whole thing is making the journo more awkward than Matt Hancock trying to act normal around women. Because look how she squirms on the spot after asking a member of a generation who still remembers a time pre-Windrush about why she thinks immigration is a major problem. As her liberal Gen Z safe space is fully penetrated after being confronted with answers she probably never expected to hear said aloud on the streets of an ideologically captured England.
I mean, you're not English, are you?
Well, that's a question for my birth certificate, I think.
No! So turns out the old based granny here is an 80-year-old lifelong Labour voter, and is now so disillusioned with the electoral and political class that she no longer bothers to indulge in nor endorse a system which has consistently let her down and sold her out for the best part of half a century. And who can really blame her? Labour, which was a party set up by and was always meant to be representing and representative of the working class, yet is today now being led by a millionaire ex-lawyer with a net worth of 10 to 15 mil. And that's just the leader. But the whole front bench is hardly representative of classic working class Britain, with the likes of multi-millionaire and bacon botherer extraordinaire Ed Miliband as Shadow Sec for Energy, and Annalise Dodds as Secretary for State for Women and Equalities, who thinks girls can have schlongs and can't even tell you what a bloody woman is.
Well, I have to say that there are different definitions legally around what a woman actually is. I mean, you look at the definition within the Equality Act, and I think it just says someone who is adult and female, I think, but then doesn't say how you define either of those things. I mean, obviously, that's then you've got the biological definition, legal definition, all this kind of thing.
With respect, I didn't ask for that. What's the Labour definition?
Well, I think with respect, Emma, I think it does depend what the context is, surely. I mean, surely that is important here. You know, there are people who have decided to that they have to make that transition. You know, I've spoken with many of them. It's been a very difficult process. for many of those people. And, you know, understandably, because they live as a woman, you know, they want to be defined as a woman.
Man, this is a guy who sure knows how to put a team together to represent the working interests of the British man. Well, I suppose his father at least was a labourer of sorts.
My dad was a tall...
But of course, she's not the only one of her generation who's disillusioned with the state of modern society. I mean, we've just had the 80th anniversary of the D-Day landings, which is very likely to have been the last gathering of veterans still alive from that day for the foreseeable future. Yet how many of them even recognise the country they went to war for? How many still see themselves reflected in its demographics? Even the PM is a brown-skinned Indian Hindu fella who's so rooted in his host nation's history that he felt it was perfectly fine to show his face and then skip out early on the celebrations to go do some more box-standard election campaigning. Like D-Day was just some stuffy local ceremony that could be skipped without too much fuss or drama. And it's so sad to see said generation almost appearing to regret bleeding and dying for the type of country we've now inherited.
I'm going to do it if it was the same as it used to be, but as it is today, the answer would be no. The violence today is disgusting with young children of 5 or 6 years old stabbing and shooting. The youth of today are disrespectful, rude, and muggings after muggings. Murder after murder. The whole country is in a disgusting state. It's not Great Britain anymore. If you want to go on holiday to Bermuda or anywhere like that, you might as well go to Dagenham or other parts of London. You don't have to go abroad because they're all here. And they're telling us what to do now, today. Immigrants are telling English people what to do. And English people are sitting back taking it like a load of mugs. And I think it's about time the English man and the youth of today stood up for the rights what we used to have.
I sometimes think now that nowadays, when you look at certain things that go on in this country, one does tend to think, good God, what did I fight for? I thought we were fighting for a better world and a better country. But the way the country goes now sometimes, I wonder if we didn't waste our time a bit. It's, I think nowadays, I think life is so different to what we expected it to be.
Setting fire to flags and denigrating the white men who fought the wars that kept them free, and which has allowed them to be free enough to even say these outrageous things in the first place, is simply proof of Yuri Bezmenov's ideological subversion in action, and the culmination of years of brainwashing a generation, which has made native populations ashamed of their own valid and valued traditions, including religion, history and heritage, and thereby ungrateful of their cultural inheritance and totally unworthy of the sacrifices made for their freedoms. And don't even get me started on the irony of supposed anti-fascists defacing the monument to the actual anti-fascist who, at Czech's notes, led the way in defeating the bona fide actual fascists. So, all in all, good on this gangster granny for giving no shits about saying what she thinks. And anything and anyone who makes smug self-satisfied gotcha journos squirm on the spot live on camera is more than welcome indeed. And certainly something we need a bit more of these days.